Hi, Base Gardener here, and I want to talk a little bit about America and Canada's relationship with the States specifically. Now, I'm going to make the claim, and I know Canadians often get their panties in a knot when they hear this kind of thing, that we have essentially an infantile attitude towards America collectively as a country. I'm going to give an example here. Imagine you're the Brigantes. You're a small tribe that lives on the outskirts of the Roman Empire. You're somewhat under their protection, but you're also at constant threat of invasion and being utterly wiped out. Now, this is essentially the position that Canada, at least geographically, should find itself in. We are a much smaller in terms of population and militarily insignificant country that lives on the borders of the world's most powerful military, perhaps the strongest empire in human history. And what I find is that Canadians, we tend to identify as being not American. And that is a huge source of pride for many Canadians. Well, that model may have worked for many decades. But I'd like to make the argument that we need an attitude adjustment as a country. The world is changing. And as no doubt many of us are aware, the American empire is at risk of perhaps collapse. But certainly things are changing. As I've discussed previously, the Bretton Woods system, whereby essentially America used its navy to patrol shipping lanes, protect global trade, that era has come to an end in many ways. China has risen to an incredible degree. Russia has destabilized America's relationship with Europe. And what I would argue is that puts Canada in an extremely precarious position. We have one friend who can keep us safe in this new world we find ourselves in. And we clearly know who that friend is. That's America. With the terrible assassination recently of Charlie Kirk, it just brought this more into my mind once again, that for Canadians who find themselves cheering on that terrible act, not only is that reprehensible behavior simply as a human, but to wish for further destabilization in America is absolute lunacy. Let's think for a second. America is the most heavily armed country in the world. Forget about just their military. The rate of gun ownership in America is far higher than any other country in the world, both on a per capita and an absolute basis. So any serious destabilization in that country, God forbid, ever led to something like civil war, would certainly spill over into Canada, and we are wholly unprepared for what that would look like. Now, I'd like to provide a much more positive vision now, okay? This is something that Kevin O'Leary has talked about, not somebody that I'm a huge fan of or anything, but with all the 51st state rhetoric that we've been hearing about, he's discussed the idea that we could have something like something similar to the European Union, an economic zone where we can eliminate the need for passports. We can move freely around the continent. Resource extraction can be done by American companies in Canada and vice versa. Now, I'm not saying this is the model that should exist, but what I would say is that we are uniquely positioned in the world as North America to be essentially self-reliant, to be strong, to be capable of withstanding invasion from any other military power. as much as China is an incredibly strong military power right now, and in many ways are eclipsing the United States, certainly in terms of production, manufacturing, we have extremely defensible borders in that we have oceans separating us from other continents. So what I personally would like to see is more integration with the United States, both culturally, economically, in terms of trade, along any avenue you choose. I think that we should become closer to the States. And what I would argue that requires from Canadians right now is to realize that we are incredibly lucky. If we'd been situated on the borders of any other similar sized military power, like let's say the USSR, former USSR, or even China as it exists today, we simply wouldn't exist as a country. We would be at best a vassal state, more than likely a province, and we would not enjoy the standard of living that we do here in Canada. That's the argument I would make, and I feel that very strongly and always have. So, regardless of where you stand on the politics of America, I just want to put that friendly reminder out there to my fellow Canadians that as bad as things can seem sometimes in Canada right now, we're still one of the best places in the world we can possibly live in. And I would argue that that is because of our proximity to the United States. Those are my thoughts. Take care. All the best. Till next time.